I will call this meeting of the Board of Appeals to order. We have Mr. Hoy, we have Mr. Babcock, we have Mr. Hutchison, and we have Mr. Everman. So that's the 5 people that'll be tonight. Does anyone on the board anticipate a need to abstain from voting on any of the issues tonight?
No.
Was anyone out to see any of the properties that we are considering tonight?
No.
2 of them, the one on Main Street and the one on Wildflower.
All right. And finally, did you speak with anyone regarding the variance requests before us tonight?
No.
No,
All right, good. It's time to consider the agenda. Does anyone have any concerns about it? If not, we can proceed with a motion to approve it.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Next, we have to consider approving the minutes from the last meeting. It was 3 months ago, a long time, but does anyone have any concerns about it? If not, a motion would be in order.
I'll move we accept the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we accept the minutes from the last meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Finally, before we get into it, we should open the floor for discussions.
Move that we open the floor for the discussion.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all right, we're ready to go. First item on our agenda tonight is the property downtown on Main Street. We've considered this before. Paul, you want to fill us in on where we stand, and maybe for those of us like me who don't remember things too well, fill us in on where we were when we last left.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me just scoot down to the item here. Right, so this was before the Board of Appeals back in October 19th. This is the subject property here, 901 Main Street. A new build, there's a proposed drive-through that will go through this here for a proposed restaurant back onto Main Street. As you recall, this is a very tight area. This is the building here that was during construction. The proposed drive-through would come through this area here between the 2 buildings along the property line. And then again, come around the north side of that building. Again, another exhibit of the drive-through. So it was, again, before the board in October. It was tabled partially because of new information or clarification of information that staff was looking for regarding this walkway easement that is between the 2 properties. It's been, I guess, agreed upon that easement is valid, even though it's a very old easement, that it is in effect. It can be paved, it can be, but must be left open. So it doesn't necessarily prohibit the drive-through necessarily, but I believe that's been agreed to by the parties, and the parties are here. You may want to hear from them regarding any sort of issue or dispute about the property lines or the easement itself. But it's staff understanding that that easement is valid and can be used or repurposed, I guess. So the following day after the Board of Appeals meeting in which you tabled it, the Common Council heard this as a conditional use permit from the Plan Commission. At that time, at that meeting on the 20th, they tabled the request for up to 30 days. I think, too, they were looking for additional information. There was a separate request that came from Alder Corpus Dax to the Plan Commission for staff to, I guess, evaluate and study the existing language for drive-through facilities. We do have a draft ordinance that is going to go back before the Plan Commission in early March. That doesn't impact your decision tonight necessarily, but to let you know, we are recommending that the emergency bypass lane be eliminated. We found that there wasn't really a need for that, and we're going to consider some other design features to, I guess, enhance or improve drive-throughs going forward. So, long story short, the council tabled that for, I think, 90 days. It came back, the conditional use came back before the council on January 19th. It was recommended for approval with two conditions, one being no objection from police and fire, basically. And that the second item was that the variance be heard again regarding the bypass lane. So here's some, again, some graphics just showing the distance between the two buildings. There's about 13 feet between here. I think there's about 11 feet between this building and the actual property line. So it's being brought back because it was tabled. Staff is understanding that the easement issue has been, I guess, resolved, but that can be discussed going forward. So it's back in the board's hands for questions and review at this point.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Paul. Mr. Bader, did you have anything to add?
Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks again for hearing this. Paul summarized that real well. I think most are familiar with the background of the request and why it's being requested, so I will not discuss that, but simply ask tonight for the board to vote in favor, as both Plan Commission and City Council now have seen the good that this could do for the community, that it doesn't in any way hurt the public interest, and it will allow this project to go forward. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The alderperson that's on representing accordingly, Mr. Scannell, but I understand we've got somebody else on tonight.
Yes, I'm on. I'm actually in District 6, but I've been following this issue.
Did you have anything you wanted to add regarding where we stand?
Yes. I think they should go out and remeasure. There's 14 feet 1 inch between the two buildings, 901 Main Street and 900 Cedar Street. Mr. Budakowski has 2.5 feet. The easement is for that leaves 7 feet 5 inches for Mr. Bader's property. That's where his property line is. His property line is not the easement. The easement is there for a public walkway. And I went on the computer and I put a public walkway, and I found there are different descriptions for it, and one of them says sidewalk. I think you should be aware of that, because if you change things and you allow him to take over a public walkway, that means you're also allowing someone to use a sidewalk. I mean, it's something that's there. That's the definition. And this easement that's there for a public walkway is there. He cannot block a public walkway. Right now, I don't know of any rule that says that he can put a driveway through and that cars can actually go on the easement and block it from people. And I also have something that's very funny. I'm realizing. Do you know when this was first brought to the Plan Commission, Mr. Bader claimed that he owned all the way up to Mr. Budakowski's property. I mean, all the way up to his building. Mr. Budakowski had to go on, find his plat, to find out that he has 2.5 feet. That's his property line. There's the 4 foot for the easement for the public walkway. And at least 7 feet 5 inches for Mr. Bader. Mr. Bader should have done his due diligence, and he should have known this when he built that apartment building. He should have moved it back. You have to realize this is the way it is, and you're going to have to look at that. You can't just arbitrarily give something away. That's a public walkway. And Mr. Newmeyer said there is going to be a public hearing on that issue.
All right.
Chair, can I respond to that, please?
Go ahead.
There are many inaccuracies in that statement, and I'm saddened that the alder would make accusations of me and what I've known or what I claimed that are wholly inaccurate. We submitted engineering plans to the city that show dimensions, lot lines, and property lines. Everything we've looked at has been engineered and approved. It is a private easement that can be paved. Much of what was just said is inaccurate.
I'm wondering if
Yes.
the board really has to consider the issues that she's raising. We're being asked to grant a variance on the terms of the ordinance. Paul, do you have any insight on where this gets resolved?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, this is ultimately a decision for the board. I would agree with the applicant's point that, I mean, this is not a public walkway. This is not intended for public use necessarily. I think the easement was intended for access between the buildings at one point. So I'm not aware of any sort of public, intention for that easement. It's a private easement.
Mr. Chairman, I think Mr. Budakowski is I think he's waiting to talk.
Yes.
Could you open it up?
Yes, Mr. Bartkowski, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. When I first developed a building on Broadway back in 1999, 2000, I was respectful of the codes of Green Bay and what they stood for. I did not invest $400,000, build something, then ask for a variance after that. I built it accordingly to your codes. Mr. Bader here puts up a building knowing he's going to put a drive-through through a very small space, not following a setback, because your code did say you had to have a bypass for a setback, or to set back so he could provide a bypass lane, and that was ignored. And you build your building and knowingly that you're going to change a code down the line to accommodate commerce here and put money in his pocket. I still don't see there's a term that you have to prove hardship. That hardship is, and how he proved that. But my point is, there was codes in place, and you're going to build a building. Why didn't you set it back if you had ideas that you were going to put a drive-through in? So this tells me that this was played out way before this, somehow, some way, in the city of Green Bay. That I'm going to go ahead and change codes to accommodate a developer. I understand he's a large developer in the area here, but I also have rights too as a developer, a small developer. I don't think there was enough studies, noise pollution studies put into this, because I have residents literally feet away. I don't think anybody on this panel tonight would approve a drive-through right next to their bedroom window. There's a bunch of issues here, I think, that are being shoved through without really being studied. And I feel I have no representation here. It is, like I said, if you're going to build a building and you're going to submit it from your builders and your architects, and you plan on putting a drive-through, why wasn't the code followed then? Instead of disregarded. And why wasn't it in the site plan as well? This is ridiculous. I just don't understand why we're even at this point. That the area is too narrow. I think that the left-hand turn at the end of this driveway there's not enough room for that as well. Snow removal, you're going to shove it up against my building to clear this area here. Those rocks that you see in Mr. Neumeyer's photographs there, notice they're up against my building. So this is the kind of respect as a building owner that I have received from Mr. Bader. He didn't ask me, can I throw rocks up against your building? I own 2.5 feet from my building. I never asked for that. and it's been snowballing, and it's just been guard. But I still go back to the fact that you're going to invest whatever it was that he invested, $6 million in a building. You're aware that you have to put that you want to put a drive-through through there, then set back your building so you can have, according to code when this was built, so you can have a bypass lane. You don't build it and then finagle your way through this and get a variance and also codes changed. I think that's disrespectful to me as an owner. I don't know how that drive-through is going to improve my building, and I don't know how that improves my building or my tenants here that are living upstairs, or noise or pollution. I don't know how that improves for me. My monies that I put into the city here for city of Green Bay and developing properties, I don't know how that improves my position as an owner. It doesn't. And he still hasn't shown hardship that this should be passed.
All right. I think we know what your opinion is. Thank you, Mr. Bartikowski.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak for or against this property? Mr. Leroy? Please go ahead. Mr. Leroy, you raised your hand.
Oh, no, didn't mean to. I'm on full run.
I'm sorry, my Zoom gave somebody else. There's Mr. Paul that wishes to speak,
Yes,
and I apologize.
thank you. If you can hear me, I hope.
Yes, you can.
I am an attorney. I do work with Mr. Bartikowski, and I just very briefly wanted to, reference the limitations on granting a variance in the ordinances. We don't see any exceptional, extraordinary, unusual circumstances or conditions in this situation. As Mr. Bartikowski indicated, to a certain extent, this is a self-imposed hardship. It's a brand new building. And the other factor that seems to be, that I don't think has been mentioned yet is, this is being based solely on economic grounds. The ask is for something that'll benefit the property not really for any other reason. So I briefly just wanted to make those points, and that's all. Thanks.
All right, good, thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak for or against the issue before us? Paul, can you refresh my memory again that this is before the council and they have not yet made a decision on it? Or they've granted, what have they done?
Right. There were two different paths, right? So because this is a downtown zoning, they needed a conditional use permit for the drive-through itself. So that made its way through to the council, and they approved it on January 19th of this past year, of this year. So along with that, they did appear, of course, before the board in October on a parallel path because they were not able to provide a bypass lane. In essence, zero. So that's why it's before the Board of Appeals to consider that variance, in essence, to eliminate the bypass lane to zero.
The council give any guidance on whether they think that their ordinance requiring a bypass lane is somehow conditional in this case?
They did not comment on that, but again, as a side request from Alder Corpus Stacks, staff has an ordinance that we will present to the Plan Commission in March to eliminate the bypass lane along with some other requirements. What we're proposing as a staff is actually widen the original drive-through lane and not have a bypass. Now, in this case with the applicant, he would be before the board regardless because he wouldn't be able to meet what's being proposed. So it's somewhat of a moot point in that sense, but there are plans to improve the drive-through standards, but they're not approved at this point.
Is the only issue before the board tonight whether the bypass lane can be Whether the lack of a bypass lane can be acceptable. Is there any concern that we should have about setbacks, construction and setbacks, allowances for setbacks that also perhaps indirectly affect the question?
Well, that's something you can look at holistically. You know, again, this is a property that's zoned downtown, so there really are no setback requirements. You're in a very tight urban area regarding these two properties. So, you know, the board could consider some conditions to mitigate that possibly, but there's not a lot of room to work with. For example, you know, some sort of bollard or fencing or something to that effect to create separation between the properties, but you don't have a lot of property to work with. What's really before the board is simply that elimination or reduction of that bypass lane to, in essence, zero.
Okay. All right, I've spoken enough. Alderman Dorff, please.
Thank you. So I'm trying to think back because I've been following this along. And while there were different opinions on city council, there was definitely a lot of support for Mr. Bader's project as well. It seems to me that there was the support, especially for changing that ordinance to eliminate the need for the bypass lane. So this is coming to you, but the ordinance won't get changed if it does until March. Is this the right timing? I wouldn't want to put this off any further, but I'm a little confused as to the order of things here.
Okay, Paul, you want to clarify that again? I got the impression that what was being offered as a new ordinance would still require a variance.
Correct, as proposed, right. So this was one of those kind of rare cases where we sometimes have to run a rezoning, or in this case, a conditional use permit along with a variance because they need approval by two different bodies. So we tried to line those up together. It's kind of a chicken or the egg, I guess, and we ended up kind of getting distorted a little bit. So I think we're back on path in the sense that the council has acted, but the Plan Commission and council have not finally acted on any sort of ordinance change. But I think you're right. You know, we're recommending, for example, 14-foot drive-through width. In this case, you know, the applicant can't meet that regardless. So they most likely would come back before the board for a variance. So it's somewhat of a moot point, but again, it's tough to speculate on a proposed ordinance that hasn't been adopted yet. So it's just more for background information of what the staff is thinking about.
All right. Yes, Alderman Steuer.
Thank you, Chair. Well, this has been in the works for quite a few months, and I kind of mimic what Alder Dorff said as well. That, you know, there's a little confusion on that with this ordinance update coming up and such. So, you know, we'll see how that plays out. But, you know, it kind of, you know, it was approved at council, but I was one of the people that voted against it. And, you know, I guess one of my questions to the board is that some of you went out and took a look at this and some of you did not. And it's almost one of those things where you almost need to go out and take a look for yourself. I mean, you know, whether you voted for it or against it, my feeling was just looking at it from a perception standpoint, it just seemed so narrow. And
I did walk it. I walked the whole thing from one end to the other, and I agree with you.
Well, right, but I'm just saying that some of the committee members said they didn't see it yet. So that's just a little concerning to me, because, you know, if you want to make a calculated good vote on something, I think you need to really take a look at it. So that was one thing. But like I said, you know, you look at the maps, you look at things, you know, over the years that I've been on council, I've voted, you know, many times for Mr. Bader on his projects. Nothing personal here, but I just have a hard time with this project. And can I give you all the reasons? Maybe not in sequence, but, you know, we're going to be, you know, we're relying on you folks to kind of make a decision, because we went back and forth with this at city council, and it looks like we have to have two different entities vote on this. So I'm I'm looking at it from my standpoint. I just don't feel it's wide enough. You know, I agree with Mr. Bordakowski that, you know, if it was a little bit, you know, if the building was built, you know, years ago or whenever it was built, that they would have considered that issue ahead of time. So to make sure that we want to get to this point, to me, it's just too narrow. Now, then again, Mr. Bader may say, well, you know, we have the site plan, we have everything in place, and that might be fine. But looking at it from my perception, it seems too narrow. I'm concerned about the building. It was built in 1892. You're going to have wear and tear on that building. You have very little room for Mr. Bordakowski to do any work on his building. You have tenants that live right there, you know, 10, 12 feet up in the air, and they're going to be listening to this traffic coming through. Like I said, I just behoove you to take a look at it yourself personally and just look at it and try to make your thoughts come forward. So that's all I have for now, but those are my takes right now. Thank you.
Good. I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Could I respond one more time, please?
Yes.
So I know that it got approved at council. There were, you know, there were to be a 5-7 vote. I don't remember. And so there were the two camps that it shouldn't. But what struck me was when the staff said that this would work and that it's not just based on a feeling, it was based on measurement. And they measured how wide cars were and how wide they would need to be to get through. And there was a lot of good data. Mr. Bader had an excellent PowerPoint. And so I feel like a lot, and I shouldn't say I feel, there are some things being brought up that were already discussed in committees that appear to be muddying the water on this narrow request. So I will just say that overall, council did approve this. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. All right, Greg, Tommy, Jim, Tom, do you have any questions on this?
My question's for Paul. What did the Police and Fire Commission vote on? I think there was a come back to us and then the Police and Fire Commission.
Yeah, so going back to the original conditional use permit, we haven't had real great clarity from either police and fire or our traffic engineer. So the fire departments actually said they would choose to remain neutral on this. Police, I don't know that we ever really had a formal response. And again, our traffic engineer chose not to comment and would rather comment more on the impact on the public right-of-way than on private property. So there's not a lot of guidance from other departments on this.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
It's Alder LaFave again. If you look at the distance between there's if the driving lane, that is supposed to be 10 feet. How wide is the bypass? Is that also supposed to be 10 feet? There's no 20 feet between those buildings. You couldn't have a bypass anyway. That's one point. But according to this, then, Mr. Bader is taking the whole easement in order to get just the 10 feet put in. And Mr. Budakowski, I know he told me that he needs to work on that building, on that side. He's not going to have room for scaffolding and try to get his work done if he's going to have people driving through there. That's another thing. That's why I'm kind of concerned about that he's going to have trouble maintaining that building, and he has to do work on that. It's all brick, it's old, and he's going to be starting work on that building soon. He's going to have room, and he's got to have some safety there. So I just say there's not enough room between there. It's fine if there was enough room, if there was 25 feet or more, 30 feet between, go ahead. And I don't think Mr. Bordakowski would have a problem with that either. It's so narrow. If you look at the spacing, as I said, Mr. Bader's property line is 7 feet 5 inches. Then you got the 4 feet for the easement. And I would think the easement would be divided to the two. That means even if he took the 2 feet, half of that easement for his part, that's 9 feet 5 inches. And they're saying a bypass or the driving lane needs to be 10 feet. So I just want everybody to look at that, measure it out.
Chair, can I provide some comment on that again, please?
Go ahead.
So once again, the Alder's measurements are inaccurate. There's 11.2 feet to the property line, another 2 and change to the adjacent owner. The 4-foot easement in question straddles the property line. There is plenty of room as engineered to do what I'm proposing. Secondly, the assertion that the adjacent neighbor would not have room to work on his property if this is approved is true in any circumstance. This is a footpath easement. It is not a cross on property to do work on an adjacent property easement. That's a very clear legal interpretation that my attorney and city legal has also reviewed. Third, just clarifying some earlier comments, Green Bay Metro Fire did approve this, signified no problems with it, and traffic indicated no issues regarding stacking or exit to Main Street or entrance with the earlier request of Plan Commission. Thank you.
Okay, gentlemen, I intend to get this done tonight.
Can I speak again?
No, sir. We're ready to deliberate on this.
All right.
I think we've spent enough time on it already. I'll tell you right now, I'm a vote no, and I'd like to get a general consensus from the rest of the board, whether we have a majority.
You want to close the floor? I guess we got to do that.
I think we'll leave it open for now. I just as soon not get into opening and closing the floor every time for a relatively informal group like this. But if necessary, we will. At this point, we're in the deliberation stage. So where do we stand, guys? Is there something here that we've got a majority on? If there is, then I think we should go ahead and vote and get this out of the way.
Can I get, before we move forward, I'm hearing really quick numbers and then I'm hearing contradicting numbers. So exact distance between building and building, and then property line, and then what is the actual easement measurement, and then what is the proposed distance of the driveway, so we can kind of mathematically build that. Because I'm looking at the plan on the application, and I'm not seeing those measurements there. And I remember last time there were some questions about property line stuff. So I'm assuming by now we have real clear numbers. Is that something, Paul, you can provide across the board, starting at one building and going all the way to the other building?
I think your diagram does it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the applicant is correct. There's from wall to wall is about 13 feet, give or take. Again, I was on site. I measured it from wall to wall. It's 13 feet. As Mr. Bader stated, there's about 11 feet from his building to the property line, I believe. And then along that property line, there is 2 feet either side, which is a total of 4 feet for an easement or walkway easement. So his aisle space, I believe, is probably not more than 10 feet, maybe 11 feet at most. Again, it probably encroaches into that easement area, but again, it's allowed to be paved, but it will be utilized for potentially a drive-through, yes. So to make sure I got the math right, if there's a 4-foot easement and it's straddling the property line, and Garrett, if you can nod if I'm correct, but there's 11 and a half feet from the property line to your building. So that gives you then 9.5 feet for the driveway. So a half of that foot would be used if the recommended is 10 feet. Is my math right? I believe so, yes.
So you have in the D1 zoning district, you can pave up to the 11 feet to the property line. I would pave from my building to the property line.
So you can use the easement?
Yes.
I'm not going to have the board try to make a decision tonight on whether or not this variance is affected by that easement. That's an issue that if the board members believe that we need a decision on that, then we should table this issue. I don't need that decision for my decision tonight. That's why I inkled to you that I am definitely a no on this. And if we have 3 votes, I would just as soon we get going on it.
I'm a no.
I don't know.
All right. Unless anyone that haven't made an indication care to make a strong argument, I would like to get this out of the way.
I just think, just a comment, because if it's 3, it's pretty much done. But I think there is a good case to be made about, current code, and I can appreciate current code, but then where code needs to go. And I think we've been very privy to trying to serve up issues and stuff to council to say, hey, the code should be looked at in these different instances. And I think this issue is brought up, Garrett brought it up before, urban density buildings and looking at suburban code. And so I think just a comment on that, the code should be updated and should be looked at over time for economic growth and development. This whole thing, for me, it still feels like we're stuck in the middle of a decision. So this is just a comment personally for me. If there is going to be, a update on ordinance and that's in play, to me, I don't see what the point of where we're at, you know what I mean, in terms of making decisions. If that process is in place, we should be the after effect in the middle of all of it. And I felt like that's what we punted on previously, was the fact that we were kind of stuck in the middle of a lot of different discussions that were happening, and until that was final, then bring it back to the board so we can rule on exactly what the code is and what's going to be happening. So it just feels like the whole thing is kind of stuck in this weird loop, and it makes me a bit uncomfortable kind of being in the middle of a lot of those other discussions. Just a comment.
Well, Tommy, we would be stuck in the middle of it after they update the ordinance, because according to the new version of the ordinance, he would still need a variance.
I understand. I think this goes back to where we were at. Like, now we're ruling on a potential ordinance, and then what is an ordinance, and then previous to that, there was a conditional use that needed to happen. So it's just, I think, good feedback. There's a lot of aldermen on the call, and I always want to give feedback to the aldermen, because I think that's a huge part of our process with them is the pain points of the city and how the development happens, and then us being able to provide feedback up. And that's what I'm saying. It's just a comment more than anything. So that's it. I won't take anybody more time.
I agree, Tommy. And that was one of the things I brought up last time, is that we always seem to be, or we quite often seem to be in this position. My answer to your comment is that the other parties have all had a chance to think about this for 3 months. And if they have decided not to completely come to an unambiguous and unquestionable decision yet, they've had their chance. And I'm arguing that we should no longer kick this around. If somebody wants us to make a decision, I'm willing to make a decision tonight. Alderman Corpus Dax.
Thank you. I guess I would ask that at planning, we were, we sent this through with the understanding that with the conditions that if fire was okay, and I'm sorry, Paul, what was the other condition? If fire was okay, and
I think it was police and fire, and then the second condition was the board granting variance at the council.
And fire was, they didn't oppose it. They were okay with it. They were okay with what Mr. Garrett was proposing. Didn't see any issue with that. We were fine with it at planning and at council. So I still support it. I still support Mr. Garrett's or Mr. Bader's proposal. If it needs to be held, I would ask that it be held versus voting no on it tonight for people to get whatever answers they still need.
Gentlemen of the board, do you wish to defer this? I don't wish to speak for you in that regard.
I'm ready.
No.
All right. All right, before we vote, I'll just say that I did not see a clear exception that required a variance here. We have some clear guidelines that we use to determine a variance. We've had various parties already consider the ordinance at play. We've heard from the people that live next to this variance request. And basically it's not up to us to figure out good reasons why the variance shouldn't be granted. It's up to somebody else to convince us that it should. That convincing hasn't worked for me yet. I'd like the board to, if there's somebody that wishes to make a motion, we'll proceed with this.
I'll make a motion to deny the variance request.
I'll second.
We have a motion made and seconded to deny the request for the variance on the property on Main Street. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Wait, excuse me.
4-1?
What was the vote for?
Deny.
Oh, to deny. Okay, I'm sorry.
What was your vote, Jim?
I inappropriately voted aye. I want to vote no on that.
So we had 3-2. Did I count right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good. The variance is denied by the majority vote of this board. We'll move on to the next item. We have James and Claudette Shabow with some property on, where are we here? Christie Lee Court? I'm sorry.
Christie Lee Court.
We'll let Paul enter to the issue.
Once I get unmuted here. Okay, can everyone see the screen?
Yep.
Yes.
This is the subject property. It was a new build, obviously based on the aerial photo provided here, just off of Ontario Road. This is a version of the site plan that was provided for construction. Actually, I think this was the version of the for site plan for building permit. The request is to construct an 8x10 deck to the rear of this property. This structure is built very close to the rear yard. Right here, there's only about 30 feet. They're proposing an 8-foot deck that would extend out. That only leaves 22 feet, so they're encroaching into the rear yard setback. The rear yard setback is required to be 25 feet. So there's a variance request there for just the rear yard setback.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Do the applicants wish to make any other clarifications to what we have before us?
I guess the only thing we'd say is the cul-de-sac is so big that it pushed the house back more than we were anticipating, and that kind of put us in a bind. We actually would have maybe preferred a 12x12 deck, but once we saw we were that close, we just kind of...
We want to be able to get out of our patio door. We can't, otherwise it's a 5-foot drop.
Oh, by the way, be nice to my wife. It's her birthday
It's
today.
my birthday.
Oh, well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're both retired, so we went with it was a 1,700 square foot requirement. It was the smallest you could build. And we picked out a plan we liked from CRI Builders. It's 1,777 square feet. So it's not a huge home, but it still put us in a bind to the back property line. And
we put our driveway as close as we could to the street, without it just try to get it in the lot.
If you send letters out to the people or whatever, but the people behind us, Clean and George, are very nice. I don't think they would be concerned, but it does require a variance.
Yeah.
Okay.
We realize that.
Good. Jim, Tommy, Tom, Greg, this?
Not for me.
No questions except for, is there anybody that is else on the call? Do we know? For or against?
Yeah, does anybody wish to speak for or against this issue? Hearing none.
Alder, I'm sorry, my video's off.
Yes, please.
I'm the alder for this district. I haven't received any calls, and I support, their project.
Okay, thank you. This strikes me as one that seems pretty clear that there is an issue that's the type of thing that we're supposed to be considering.
Yeah, to make this quick, I'll make a motion to approve. I mean, to me, this is one of those situations where the land is creating, you know, a bit of an issue. So I motion to approve.
I'll second.
Very well. I suspect we're in violent agreement. All in favor with the motion that's presented to us?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? You have your variance.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate it.
Welcome.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday.
She's 73.
Oh, you don't
She's catching
look
up to
70.
me.
Things were going so
Still
well.
hanging in there.
Let's move on to item number 3.
Good. Thank you, gentlemen.
You're welcome.
Bye.
We have the property on Wildflower Row. Ms. Ruiz wishes to talk with us about a fence. And Paul, do you want to clue us in on this?
Sure, yep. I have the property up on the screen here, 2646 Wild Grove. This is a corner lot here. They got a permit to install a fence that runs around the property here. They have a pool in the back. I think that fence runs from the east side around the south and to the right-of-way line in this area here. This is a copy of the permit they received, so there's no issue as far as the permitting itself. However, the fence installation is not compliant with the zoning code. So this is the vinyl fence that was installed looking south. Now we're looking north towards Wildflower Row. It appears almost that the fence has gone over the right-of-way, possibly. That may need to be verified. But the fence also is too close to the right-of-way, or it encroaches into the setback area. So in a case like this, where we have a corner side yard, you can have a 6-foot fence, provided it goes up to about 1/2 the distance of the house, but it can go no closer than 1/2 the distance of the established setback. So the setback from this district would be 15 feet. Half of that distance would be 7.5 feet. So ideally they would come out no closer than 7.5 feet here and then come down. You can kind of see where that fence was placed, it appears to be much closer, almost into the right-of-way. Here's another view showing the end of that fence. So the request is to retain that fence encroachment into the side yard, corner side yard setback.
Paul, is there any reason to consider the applicant's concern that these measurements were presented to the city or the inspector along the way and that they were taken by surprise?
It's possible there may have been some miscommunication. I'm not sure. I didn't follow up with the inspector directly, but when the housing and zoning inspector went out there to investigate, he discovered that the fence was placed improperly.
Okay, let's hear from the applicant. Do they care to speak on this? You seem to be on mute. You're still on mute. There you go.
Can you hear us? No?
Yeah, you're not on mute anymore, according to Zoom anyway.
Maybe if they turn off the volume.
Yeah, is there a volume to deal with? Is your computer on mute?
Like, did they use computer audio when they?
Yeah.
There we go. Talk. Oh, I thought it was going to work.
Yeah.
You have to choose computer audio for the computer to work, but you have to choose that.
there a little arrow next to the microphone button where it says mute? A little arrow right next to that. If you click on that, it should give you some audio options.
Microphone.
Hello?
There you go.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Thank you. Sorry. I'm just here translating for her. She's this is her property. And I guess she's just explaining that, that they had done the measurements and stuff and they had approved them, and I guess they're going based off of the measurements. And they don't know why there's a problem.
Okay, so the applicant is contending that she presented enough information at the time that she perhaps initiated this project that she felt that she had approval to do what she ended up doing. What did the fence manufacturer or contractor have to say about this?
Que tuvo que decir el que puso la fensa, que contrató la fensa. ¿Ustedes la pusieron? Okay, no, that she said that they had put it up. That they.
It puzzles me that the fence people wouldn't have been a little more observant of what would be required here.
Yeah, no, it was her and her husband that put up the fence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why. And they were going based off of the measurements done. So that's why.
All right.
Que no había ningún problema porque mandamos las medidas.
They thought there was not going to be any problems or any issues because they had sent in the measurements and all that.
Y ellos aceptaron.
And like it was approved, they didn't think that there was any problems.
All right. Alderman Corpus Dax, did you wish to speak regarding this?
Am I understanding correctly that they provided the information to the city as far as the dimensions of the fence, and there was potential miscommunication along the way?
It's the way it sounds. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I haven't received any information. If they provided that information and the mistake was potentially on the city, I think the variance should be granted for this here.
Yeah, we are allowed to grant a variance in a situation where the city has made a clear mistake. And I'm just trying to, maybe before I ramble on anymore, we should let Greg or Tommy or Tom or Jim weigh in on this question. I think we see before us exactly what, as the applicant portrayed it, a potential communication problem. Any thoughts, gentlemen?
Can we see a plan view again?
Sure thing.
Yeah, on that note, and maybe that's where you're headed, but to me, I always, we always talk about kind of what it is, but what does compliance look like in this case is always an interesting thing for me to know, okay, how egregious is this situation?
Well, I think the way Paul explained it is, at the very least, the fence has to be moved back a number of feet along Lindsay Lane.
Well,
yeah, Paul, sorry, go ahead. I was just going to ask if current, right now it's encroaching over by 7 feet. That's how far off it is.
I don't know for sure, but taking a measurement of the terrace area between the back of curb and the right-of-way line is about 17 feet. Where those utility boxes are, maybe down in this corner here, to me, seems like it's almost at or over the right-of-way. So, I think you may have a case here where there's inspector error. I mean, that's possible. But I think you also have to clarify if this is over the right of way. If it's over the right of way, it most likely should be removed or set back out of the right of way, because there's no permission to put it back in the right of way.
Is the issue only along Lindsay, Paul?
Yes, correct.
Yes. There's no other places along the back or anything?
No, outside the setback, you can go 6 feet high. So the fence, runs like around here, I believe. It's just when you get to 6 feet, it has to stop short of 7.5 feet of the right-of-way line.
How about if it were cut in half?
Well, then the max height is 3 feet, 3 foot solid. 4 foot 50%, 5 foot 80% open. Yeah. So there are provisions for encroachment into the setback at different heights. Sure.
So if it went to 3 feet, Paul, is the location okay?
I don't know, because again, I think it should be verified if it's in the right of way or not. I think it's at or very near the right of way. So that's concerning in itself. But that might be a separate issue. I mean, if you're considering a variance for inspector error, I think that's maybe fair, but I think you also have to ask the question then is, where is the placement of that fence? Is if it's on public right of way, it probably should be pulled back or out of the right of way.
Well, I'm not claiming, at least for me anyway, I'm not claiming that there was an error. I think that there was a communication issue that puts neither party at blame or at fault. Jim or Greg, Tom or Tommy, where do you think we need to go on this?
I think we need to know the right of way. It's my opinion.
Yeah, it looks like that box in the plan view is actually located right as the picture shows. I mean, it looks like the box, if that little square in that corner is actually that box.
Yeah.
I think the fence was put right on the property line. I guess we got to confirm that, because if that's the case, I'd be inclined to grant the application. But if it's in the right of way, then that's a different thing. So I guess we have to ascertain if it is in the right of way. So should we move to table this to see if the city can determine if it's in the right of way or not? I guess, can we do that?
Well, I could comment. I mean, the board could do any number of things, right? I mean, you could certainly grant the variance if you feel there's a hardship there, with the caveat that it be verified that it's outside the right of way. If it isn't, then it still becomes an enforcement issue. Beyond that, you can think of denial or any other combination potentially. Right. But I think the right of way is concerning for staff, just because we cannot confirm that at this point.
Right.
Yeah, if I could, if I understand the process correctly, the applicant first got a permit for the fence.
Yeah.
And that was a step as far as them trying to comply with city requirements. So this is not a case of somebody built the fence and now they're coming back to us for variance. This is a person who is trying to comply with the existing zoning laws. And so after they got that part of the process completed, they went back and said, okay, here's what we think we would like to do. Can you confirm this? And at that point, there was a miscommunication. So when I went to visit the site, my concern really was, is there a safety issue? And I took a photo going on Lindsay and approaching Wildflower to see if the fence inhibited any of the visibility coming up to the intersection. And that was the shot that I took. And you can see that there's not going to be a problem with vehicular traffic traversing on Wildflower. So I think in this case, based on the good intentions of the applicant, the fact that there is no condition harming safety, vehicular safety, I would be inclined to not draw this out and approve it from a perspective of there's no harm being done by this fence, even if it is in the right of way. So I would vote to approve the ordinance, the request.
All right. Where do the rest of you guys stand on this?
I agree.
I think from my perspective, I would be okay with it, assuming, we condition that approval today with the not in the right of way. And that would be my, that would be my 2 cents, is that we would have moved to approve, but pending approval, pending confirmation of the right of way.
I think that makes sense. Tommy, did you have a thought?
I mean, to me, this is one of those ones that sucks, and it's very sucks is not a formal term, a not good situation. But yes, communication errors or mistakes. However, it's a self-imposed kind of hardship situation, and I think it can be remedied. Either moving the fence back wall that does create economic hardship. It's really about the structure and the physical structure and how do we do that. And they could change the fence size, they could move it back a bit, and they still keep the fence. So I feel like there's an ability to comply while it will cost money. And feedback aside around communication, I'm inclined to vote to deny.
Okay, I'm inclined to vote in favor on this one. Explain to me, Paul, there are various things we can approve and can't approve, and I think what you're suggesting is that we can't approve a fence being in the right of way, or at least being over that line.
Right. I mean, that's a separate issue that's handled by the Department of Public Works. So we just, again, would want clarification that if it's outside the right of way, then it's a moot point, I guess. If it's in the right of way, then, our Department of Public Works work with the property owner to resolve that, either moving the fence or a hold harmless agreement or some means of protecting the city's interest. Yeah.
Okay. Paul, do you have the appropriate people on staff that perhaps speak Spanish well enough to handle this issue? Because I suspect that may be a part of where we are here.
Sure. Or the lady who's assisting in the translation, we can talk to her as well. I mean, we're more than happy to, help out where we can and provide that communication. But there's no one on staff, unfortunately, no.
Okay. Well, that makes it even easier for me. Okay. I'm okay on this, guys, with the caveat that Greg mentioned. So I'll leave it up to those of you who are more astute at this to make the proper motion.
I will make a motion to approve the requested variance with the condition that we get confirmation there's no obstruction in the right of way.
I'll second.
We have a second. Paul, is that clear for the way that you think this can be resolved with staff, knowing this?
I think so. It's clear enough for me. Sure.
All right. We have a motion made and seconded before us. All in favor of granting the variance with the caveat regarding the encroachment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. 4-1. Variance has been granted with a caveat. Are you at the applicant end? Are you okay? Do you understand where we've come from?
Yeah. Are you guys going to send like a letter, or are you guys going to come and take a look at the fence and see if it's like at the right of way that you guys are saying?
Yeah, so there's an inspector for that area, Tim Neves, and I'll work with him and we'll maybe make a site visit, take some measurements, and hopefully it'll be simple enough we can just measure it and see how close it is. If it's an encroachment, then we'll talk further. If it is, outside the right of way, then there's no other discussion.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that's clear.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, finally, we have item number 4, the property on Church Road. We have the, Mr. Leroy is on. I accidentally cited you before. We'll hear from you after we first hear from Paul on teeing us up on what we have before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the property at 3608 Church Road. It's an infill lot on the south side of Church Road, north of Red Smith School and east of Nicolay Drive. The issue here, this is a low-density, single-family neighborhood, R1 district, new construction. To the south of this property, there is a navigable stream, and that has caused an ESA, an environmentally sensitive area setback, which is kind of delineated here on the map. So you can see the Church Road, the footprint of the proposed residence, the driveway, and that setback line. So what they've done is they've proposed to set this house right at the ESA line. There's not a rear yard setback here at all. The issues with the front yard setback. So typically we would take an average of the homes in the block, and they can't meet that setback because of the rear yard ESA setback here that's limiting their ability. So their setback is to go from 25 down to 20 feet to allow the construction of that building. Most likely you may see other requests in the future because there are 2 other vacant lots and they may be coming through on separate requests in the future. But the request tonight is simply a relief for the front yard setback along Church Road.
Okay, yeah, that's a great diagram, Paul. It sure explains why we need what we need to talk about here. Okay, we'll hear from Mr. Leroy.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, board. This project right here is related to a approval that was granted back in August on the property to the west. Same conditions, and a building that is pretty similar to what was built in the neighborhood. So that house that's on lot just to the west of this particular lot has now been built and has been built at 20 feet off of the front yard setback. So this is it's a slightly smaller house, not much. Issue being that when it comes to the backyard, we're not even talking building setback, we're talking grading, we're talking any sort of concrete patio out back. Insofar that when we looked at it and graded it now here over the past few weeks, there's just no room. We're putting there will be development as far as the grading right up to the ESA line itself with a 20-foot setback.
Okay, this one seems pretty clear to me, guys. Alderman Dorf, do you care to weigh in?
Yeah, I'd like to speak in favor. I drove out there today and I looked at it and I remember that you guys had done a similar one, had approved that. And I didn't know it was in August. I hadn't remembered that, but I was here for that meeting too. And it makes perfect sense. It just kind of falls back behind those homes and they all have little short driveways and it'll just fit right in with the whole neighborhood. So thank you.
Yeah, it strikes me they did the best they could in a situation that had a lot of constraints. Tommy, Tom, Greg, Jim, if there's any further discussion, otherwise I think a motion is in order.
I'll make a motion to approve the request as stated.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion made to approve the variance as requested. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I see no opposed. I see 5 in favor. You have the variance.
Thank you all.
All right, I think a motion is in order to close the floor.
Make a
Motion
motion.
to close. Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded to close the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, this brings us to the informational part of our meeting. Is there anything we need to discuss here, Paul?
Yeah, there's just two things I wanted to pass along. Don, you had asked about temporary variances in the past.
Yeah.
I went back a few years. We had one recently on Chestnut Street that involved the dumpsters. I think it was 143 North Chestnut, possibly, for Gather, I believe. The only other one in recent memory was at 2793 Greenbrier. That was for Baycare. And a temporary variance was granted for the fencing that was placed out there. That's just south of the hospital, north of Greenbrier. And that's a 5-year window, so that'll have to be brought back. I wasn't able to locate any others that I was aware of, I guess, so to speak. So I just wanted to report that out. The other thing, too, is I provided a variance tracker into the civic clerk for you to take a look at that has all of our 2020 variances that were spelled out, so to speak. So we've been tracking those at the request of the board, and you can look at that online if you want, just to get a feel of the locations, if they're in historic districts, or what types of variances were approved last year.
Okay.
So we've been trying to do like quarterly updates to give you kind of a larger picture, or more of a holistic view of variances the board has been granting in the past quarter, past year. So just information. That's all I had to pass along.
Good, good. Thank you, Paul. Where does the city stand? Do they have any policy on when we would resume meeting in person?
I haven't heard. I'm not sure if Jesse is aware, or Stephanie, who's on the line as well, but I haven't heard any indication that we're going back as staff.
Okay. I'm not encouraging it.
Right. But I think even, after that, for public meetings in person, I haven't heard anything that hasn't been discussed that I'm aware of.
I haven't heard anything either.
Okay. Well, Mr. Hoy and I, and perhaps even Mr. Hutchison, are approaching the time when we can get our vaccinations and expect to be bulletproof within about a month and a half. So,
yeah, I mean,
not a big concern. I think this is working better than it has in the past. Maybe I'm just getting used to it, but
yeah, I would agree. I think it's worked out pretty well, especially on a cold night like this. No one wants to go to City Hall, so I think it's worked out pretty well. But
right,
yeah, and
I agree.
we're still working on. We're still trying to perfect it. But yeah, if there's any suggestions or anything you need, let us know.
All right,
Bob,
gentlemen, I think we're ready to go.
I saw the application was implemented that we worked on, so I was happy to see that with the 3-step test. Like, that area was really easy for me to be able to just how their case is being made in those 3 steps right there. So I think that's great to see that work being implemented. And I'll have to log in. I used the packet this time, so I didn't log into City Clerk. But I'll have to log in and check on that thing, and that's based on our feedback as well. So I appreciate you and the team's work on that. I think that as that evolves, that's going to be a really, really valuable tool for the city. So good job.
Yep.
Agree. That was much easier to read, I think, and understand.
Yeah, good. I'm glad.
All right, I think we're done, guys. We need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We be done. Thanks, guys.